The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
America under attack. Today we report on 2 acts of radical Islamic terrorism on American soil in a single day. The Pentagon says Iran has no air force, no navy, and no air defenses left. We'll have the latest on the war effort. And former Department of Homeland Security spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin is here today in studio. We're broadcasting today from our Salem studios in Columbus, Ohio. And thanks to our affiliate, 98.9 The Answer, here for the hospitality today. And we look forward to our listener event tonight here in Columbus. We start with the news, and as we closed the show yesterday, we were just getting the first details of the 2 men who leveled attacks in Michigan and Virginia. And as we embark on today's program, we know more, a lot more, in fact. Yesterday was a dark day for the United States, and I think we need to sit with it for a moment and understand the situation that we are in. 2 separate radical Islamic terror attacks, 2 different states, just hours apart. The first one, Old Dominion University, the scene in Norfolk, Virginia. A man named Mohammed Baylor Jallo, a former Virginia National Guardsman who had already been convicted of trying to provide material support to ISIS back in 2016, walked into a classroom in Constant Hall, asked if it was an ROTC class, and when someone said yes, he shouted, "Allahu Akbar," and opened fire. He killed the instructor, a retired Army lieutenant colonel named Brandon Shaw, a man who spent his career serving our country and spent his retirement teaching the next generation to do the same. He was a true American hero, and may God rest his soul. 2 of his students were also shot and wounded. And here is where the story turns, because these ROTC students, these kids, these heroic kids, did something extraordinary. They rushed the gunman, they subdued him, and they killed him. Listen to how the FBI described it in cut number 1.
How was he deceased?
There were students who were in that room that subdued him and rendered him no longer alive. I don't know how else to say it, but they basically were able to terminate the threat.
So he was not shot?
He was not shot.
He shot 3 people?
Correct. We have information that he shot 3 people.
The one that went to Virginia.
Rendered him no longer alive. The FBI says if those students hadn't acted, there is no telling how many more people would have died. Now, let me ask you a question that perhaps you've been asking yourself since you heard about this yesterday. This man was convicted of trying to support ISIS. He served 8 years in prison. He told a judge in 2016 he wanted to carry out an attack like the one at Fort Hood. And now he's out, walking around in America on some sort of supervised release? Why was this man free? Why is a literal terrorist from a foreign country, no less, Sierra Leone, released from jail early, free to roam our country? Why aren't people like this man being denaturalized and deported? Why are we committing suicide as a culture and as a society? It is a choice to live this way, folks, and we can stop making it anytime we want. Hours later in Michigan, Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, the scene, the largest Reform synagogue in the United States. 140 children in the building, preschoolers, a learning center full of kids. A man named Ayman Ghazali, 41 years old, also a naturalized citizen from Lebanon, drove a truck through the front door of the synagogue. He was armed with a rifle and the car was laden with explosives. He started shooting. The temple security guards engaged the attacker. One of them was hit by the truck and knocked unconscious. The other guards returned fire and killed Ghazali before he could reach a single child. The FBI is investigating this as a, quote, targeted act of violence against the Jewish community. Reports say his family members were killed in a recent Israeli airstrike in Lebanon. The head of the Jewish Federation in Detroit perhaps said it best in cut number 2.
As the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Detroit, I'd love to say I'm shocked or I'm surprised, but I'm not. This is something that we trained for. Thank you to all of the law enforcement officers who stand behind us and the many who don't. Thank you to our Jewish community security team. This is a tough time. It is a tough time, but we will get through this. We'll get through this together. We'll get through this stronger. And we'll continue to be loud and proud of being Jewish. This will not change us. This will not deter us, and we will continue.
Say that I'm shocked or surprised, but I'm not. That was his words, and he's right. That should haunt all of us because we've been watching this build for years. October the 7th and the explosion of pro-Hamas rallies on college campuses. Death to America chants in Dearborn. Israeli embassy employees murdered on the streets of Washington. A firebombing at the Pennsylvania governor's mansion. Islamic radicals throwing IEDs in New York City just a few days ago. An Islamic radical opening fire at a bar in Austin, Texas, killing 2. And now a truck driven through the front door of a synagogue with 140 children inside. America is attacked, ladies and gentlemen, from his radical Islamic terrorism. And you have to say the words because until we say it, we cannot fight it. At the Pentagon this morning, Secretary Pete Hegseth and General Dan Kane gave a briefing on the state of the war effort. Let's listen to Secretary of War Hegseth in cut number 4.
Iran has no air defenses. Iran has no air force. Iran has no navy. Their missiles, their missile launchers and drones being destroyed or shot out of the sky. Their missile volume is down 90%. Their one-way attack drones yesterday, down 95%. And as the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with. We have been dealing with it and don't need to worry about it. We're on plan to defeat, destroy, disable all of their meaningful military capabilities at a pace the world has never seen before.
Today, Secretary Hegseth will be the heaviest day, he says, of strikes from the Americans and the Israelis of the effort. We're 2 weeks into it now. He says a 20% surge in operations. Joint Chiefs Chairman Kane made some comments this morning as well. Let's listen to him in cut number 6.
On to project power beyond their borders and protect our deployed. In just the first 13 days of this operation, our artillery forces have made history. They fired the first precision strike missiles ever used in combat, reaching deep into enemy territory. They've used Army ATACMS to sink multiple ships, including a submarine, and they've done all of this with the precision and determination that comes from relentless training and trust in each other and in their weapon systems. Yesterday, I had the incredible...
Hegseth also said at the briefing today that Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is wounded, likely disfigured, and on the run. He has not been seen in public since the announcement of his becoming supreme leader was made. There is also sad news to report. 6 American service members were killed in a refueling tanker crash in western Iraq. This was not caused by friendly or hostile fire. But of course, all military missions carry some danger, and we will remember these soldiers for the heroes that they are. Hegseth also confirmed that an independent general officer from outside of CENTCOM is leading the investigation into the Iranian school strike. No timeline on when it will be finished, but they have promised transparency and that the truth will come out. This is Scott Jennings here on Salem, Common Sense for the American people. Let's talk a little bit about aches and pains. You know, we've been using Relief Factor in the Jennings household since last summer. Everybody who has taken it, me included, my father included, has said and believes that it has made a difference in their lives. We're hearing that, in fact, from customers around the country. But here is something new about Relief Factor. They're always improving the product. And they have made their already trusted formula even better. They have added a premium black pepper extract because it helps your body absorb the high-quality key ingredients more efficiently. In simple terms, it gets your body even more benefit from this Relief Factor product that you're already taking. That really matters. If you're going to take something daily, you want to know your body is using it as best it can. If you've been listening to me talk about Relief Factor for a while, perhaps this is your moment. If you're already taking it, hey, you're getting an enhanced formula and it will work even smarter. Here's what you do. You start the 3-week quick start. It's $19.95. You get it at relieffactor.com or you call 1-800-4RELIEF. Really nothing to lose. 3-week quick start. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or relieffactor.com. When we come back, former Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, is here for an exclusive interview. Stay with us on The Scott Jennings Show.
Hi, this is Scott Jennings for my friends at BestHotGrill.com, your source for staying warm and eating well when the temperature drops. When it's cold outside or the power goes out, you can turn your wood-burning fireplace into a reliable source of emergency heat with Rasmussen Chill Buster vent-free gas logs and Alterna vent-free fireballs. They require no electricity, just natural gas or propane, and it helps keep your family warm when you need it most. And winter cold doesn't mean the grilling has to stop. With a Solaire infrared gas grill, you can grill year-round. Solaire infrared burners heat up in just 3 minutes, perform just as well in winter as they do in summer, and they cook food faster while locking in incredible juiciness and flavor. So stay warm, stay fed, and stay prepared. Visit BestHotGrill.com to complete the personalized log sizing form or order a Solaire demo rental grill so you can try before you buy. That's BestHotGrill.com, BestHotGrill.com.
You've heard the narratives. Now get the truth. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
And it is Friday, March the 13th. We broadcast live today from Columbus, Ohio, here on Salem. Now, you have seen our next guest all over the media for the first year of the Trump administration, handling media inquiries and interviews related to immigration enforcement and other Department of Homeland Security issues. Her name is Tricia McLaughlin. She exited the department at the end of February, and since then, her boss, Kristi Noem, has also been replaced by President Trump. Her last day will be March 31st. Joining us here, Tricia McLaughlin here in Columbus, Ohio. Thanks for joining us today.
Scott, thanks for having me. Good to see you in person, and good to see you in person in my home state.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us here in Ohio, and thank you for all the information during your tenure. We did a lot of reporting on the show about immigration enforcement and everything that was going on with ICE, and so you were always very forthcoming and transparent with the media. I do want to start with what's in the news. There are some Democrats and media outlets claiming that you had something to do with the awarding of a $200 million contract for advertising services, and that your husband, Ben Yoho, owner of a media consulting firm here in Ohio, received that contract and personally profited from it. I know that you have a different point of view about this, and I wanted to give you a chance to answer those allegations today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, people should have the facts. And I think first and foremost, there's a lot of people, and understandably saying, why does Homeland Security have this ad campaign in the first place? And the reason why is that there was 10 to 20 million illegal aliens who entered this country over the last 4 years, in the most cheapest and safest way to get these people out of the country is self-deportation. So what these ads were designed to do, and Secretary Noem did in these ads, is tell these illegal aliens, hey, $2,600, free flight home, and potentially come back the legal right way. So getting to that point is then the mechanism. Department of Homeland Security chose Safe America, which is run by two storied prolific professionals, Patrick McCarthy and Mike McElwain, and then they did the domestic piece of this, and then the international piece was done by people who think, Jay Cottenton. And as far as my role in that, Office of Public Affairs was the program manager, so to speak. So we were the vehicle that contract went through. But as far as my husband's role in that, he was not selected, did not have any contract with Department of Homeland Security. What happened is Safe America, they subcontracted for very limited production, my husband's firm, to produce these ads. And as soon as I found that out, I said, optics don't look good here, even though legally, Scott, DHS cannot be involved in dictating or controlling these subcontractors. I knew, hey, optics don't look good. This is my fiance. I don't want to be involved in that. So I firewalled, talked to our lawyers, and they said Trisha did this by the book, and we were all good there. So the facts will continue to come out.
So I've seen the letter that the Senate Democrats have sent making all sorts of allegations. I've also seen Ben's rebuttal, which is evidence-based and fairly specific in refuting the allegations. Let's talk about the ad campaign a little bit. You know, it does sound like a lot of money, $200 million. Secretary Noem was questioned about this by Senator Kennedy in a hearing. But as you point out, it was all about trying to get illegal aliens to self-deport. We've deported about 3 million people, and the vast majority, in fact, have self-deported, right?
Yes, about 2.5, I believe, at this point. And it was actually Department of Homeland Security put out a statement, I think a few weeks ago, that it was about a $39 billion in savings for the American taxpayer. So, look, I completely get it. Americans should be asking questions about how their taxpayer dollars are being spent. We had DOGE for a reason, getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and people should be skeptical. But they should also be skeptical when the media and Democrats are force-feeding them this corruption narrative that the facts don't support.
And so, for the record, you didn't have anything to do with the awarding of any contract that ultimately benefited your husband's media firm, which in fact was a subcontractor to the overall ad campaign, correct?
In no way was I involved in the selection of my husband's any subcontractor. It is against the law. DHS by law cannot dictate or control subcontractors.
All right, that voice you're hearing is Tricia McLaughlin. She's the former Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. We have about a minute left here, Tricia. On this issue, have you been contacted by the Senate committee? Are you expecting to be having to go up there and answer questions? What will happen next for you and Ben on this?
I haven't been contacted by Senate Democrats. My husband, he sent a letter yesterday stating out the facts, saying that his company did these limited ad contracts at cost. I think they grossed $200,000, a lot different than the $200 million.
Yeah, this is an important point because, you know, online the allegation is somehow you made $200 million and Ben made $200 million. The reality is he did $200,000 worth of production work at cost, and so the facts here are being grossly distorted. But I assume it's causing a great deal of contact with you, both online and people making all sorts of extreme allegations. We have to take a break, Tricia. We can talk more about this if you'd like after the break. You're listening to The Scott Jennings Show. It's common sense for the American people. We're broadcasting on Salem, and we're doing it live from Columbus, Ohio today. More with our special guest, Tricia McLaughlin, when we come back right after this.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit learscott.com.
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
And it's Friday, March the 13th. We're on location, broadcasting from Columbus, Ohio today. Special in-studio guest is Tricia McLaughlin. You know her. She was all over the media for the last year as the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. We'll get back to our conversation with Tricia here in just one second. Here is a message, though, that every parent needs to hear, every grandparent, too, for that matter. More kids are being targeted online. They use gaming platforms, social media, and messaging apps. These companies that run these programs profit from all of this screen time and engagement. And when predators slip through the cracks, and they do slip through the cracks, families pay the price. Our friends and partners at Child Help hear from kids every day who were contacted through these platforms, these games, these apps, and these kids are groomed. They are manipulated They are threatened by adults who are planning to be pretending rather to be someone else. One boy reached out through Child Help's chat hotline. He was terrified and ashamed. An adult that he met in one of these online games was demanding photos and threatening to lie to his parents if he didn't comply. He didn't know what to do. He was petrified, so he calls the Child Help child abuse hotline. They get involved. They protect the child. They may well have saved that young man's life. And that's why I donate to Child Help. That's why I'm asking you to do it. We're asking for a $27 donation. If we can save one child from child abuse for $27, doesn't that sound like a good expenditure today? I would recommend that you go to childhelp.org/Scott or text Child Help to 94878 and donate $27 today. Sitting with me today, Tricia McLaughlin. Tricia, you were Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. You left a few weeks ago. And right after you left, it was announced by President Trump that he was making a change at the top of the department, replacing your boss, Kristi Noem, with Markwayne Mullin, the senator from Oklahoma. Her last day will be March 31st. It's really the biggest personnel change of Trump's second administration. What was your reaction when you saw that happening, and did the president make the right decision?
I think President Trump has to make his personnel decisions for the moment that we're in, and I'm confident Markwayne Mullin will do a fantastic job as soon as he's confirmed by the Senate. I think Secretary Noem, she had so much on her plate, and she did really, look at the border. People don't talk about it anymore. Historic. She helped shutter that, close it, secure it. 3 million illegal aliens out of this country. But that's not only what Homeland Security does. There's 23 component agencies. You're looking at FEMA, TSA, Secret Service, U.S. Coast Guard. She had a huge role. I think she did a great job, and I think she'll do a great job in her next role.
Tell us about what it was like to work there with Secretary Noem. There's, as you mentioned, it's a big agency. There's a lot going on. She was doing a lot of travel. Immigration got a lot of the focus, but it's a big thing to manage, and obviously that's getting some scrutiny now because of the hearings and the replacement that the president made. Give us an idea of the day-to-day management style of Kristi Noem.
Yeah, we started off our day at 7 a.m. call with ICE and CBP, and that was every day, Monday through Saturday. And she was working on everything from, in those last month with the FEMA, with the historic storms, and U.S. Coast Guard, their response to a lot of disasters that were happening. Look, that place got, I think, as you probably know, was a meat grinder. It's we were facing a very contentious adversarial media environment, still trying to maintain the public support on the issue of immigration. Of course, the president had a mandate there, but I think, I had planned to be there for a year, and I made it to that year.
Yeah, you actually extended your service a bit because you were dealing with the situation in Minneapolis, which got a lot of attention throughout the back part of your tenure. Talk to us about Minneapolis. You were dealing with media. You obviously had the two situations where the two people lost their lives and the protests, and then the president decided to send Tom Homan to Minneapolis. You were kind of riding herd over all the public communications about all of that. You've had a few weeks to reflect on it now.
Yeah.
Take us into Minneapolis. Give us your reflection on what happened there.
Yeah, so I think you have to keep in mind, this is all within the context. Also, we had surged HSI because we were seeing that there was at least $9 billion in fraud, rampant fraud happening. And I think that started to really leave the limelight as there was more of the focus on the immigration enforcement. And, we had done immigration enforcement starting in Los Angeles, these at-large operations, then moving to Chicago, and then moving to Minneapolis. And what we saw was that these agitators and these rioters and sometimes protesters were getting more and more organized. And they were doing things like provoking an officer, taking it, clipping it, and it would go viral online. What we were finding is we were really chasing then the public narrative because we're trying to find out what happened, get the information from the officers on the ground. And so I think that's when we started to lose the public relations battle as agitators became more and more organized, and the media followed suit.
Yeah, the organization of the protesters, we've talked about on this show and had some reporters on who have uncovered the Zoom meetings where they're training people, the funding mechanisms for all of this. Were you all aware of that at the Department of Homeland Security? Were you tracking it? And do you have any views on just how organized it was? Because I think the media narrative was, these are just organic grassroots people showing up to voice their opinion. But the reality is highly organized, very funded people. We're sending folks out into the streets, and my observation is they didn't care who got hurt or worse when they made those decisions.
No, these people were pawns. Some of these people were very well-meaning. They just wanted to have their voice be heard in opposition to certain policies, but they were used as pawns by these highly organized groups, highly funded groups. What we were seeing as well, a lot of the individuals that came from Los Angeles, we'd see them then pop up in Chicago doing those at-large operations, back to Minneapolis and Portland. It was the same people, similar equipment, and they were being bussed in. Their hotels being paid for. So I'm hopeful that will come to light exactly what was happening. Is that foreign or domestic funding? But we were seeing that they were being increasingly sophisticated.
Yeah, I think the idea that there could have been foreign funding for this ought to alarm everybody because, obviously they were trying to tear apart our cohesion here in the United States of America. And it's fine, I think, to have debates, but when you're organizing and funding people to go out and create situations and narratives that rip us apart, and that's being promoted by foreign entities, that would certainly be troubling. You dealt with the media every day. You were getting, I assume, dozens or hundreds of inquiries on a daily basis. And, you were dealing with some media, I assume, that you would say were doing their level best to get it right. You were dealing with some media that you probably came to believe were dedicated to getting it wrong, to promoting narratives over facts. Tell us about that. Maybe give us some examples of some of the most egregious misinformation that was promoted throughout the media ecosystem about the president's immigration agenda.
Yeah, I think time and time again we saw that there was, from the mainstream media, complete deference to the illegal alien who had broke the laws of our country, and really kind of a dismissal of anything that the U.S. government or our officers on the ground would say. I mean, of course, there was such rampant abuse and assault against our law enforcement, and that was really just dismissed outright. I would say among some of the craziest stories I dealt with, it was a New York Times story, a guy from Jamaica who had been in the United States for 30 years, and he was being deported. And if you look probably at the 16th paragraph, it becomes clear he was actually in prison for 15 years in the U.S. for kidnapping.
So 30 years in the U.S. illegally, 15-year prison sentence for kidnapping, but this was the sympathetic illegal alien story they chose to promote to say, oh, this is so cruel.
It came with a Vogue kind of cover shoot, the whole 9 yards. There was also a story about a father of Marines. And you're thinking these young men have served our country. It is, very sad that their father is then being arrested and deported. But you look at the facts of it, and this guy actually had been charged for domestic violence, and he'd actually been convicted for assault with a deadly weapon. So again, these are not people you want to be your neighbors, but there's total deference to these illegal aliens who time and time again break our nation's law with every step that they take in this country.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of stories, some recent, where there are people in our country, and the one I always go back to, and I still can't believe he's in the United States, is Kilmer Abrego Garcia. This has been vexing the administration from the beginning. But whether they're illegal aliens or whether they're here on visas or, frankly, whether they came here and then got naturalized, but you have this group of people, some of them are dedicated to breaking our laws, terrorizing communities, tearing down Western civilization, fomenting violent protest or what have you. I think a lot of average Americans just look at this and say, why is it so hard for us to get rid of people out of our country who, bottom line, wish us harm, whether that's through their actions, their convictions. I mean, we had the story the other day in Virginia, the illegal alien who, committed a murder. We've had the illegal alien truck drivers on our roads. People are looking around saying, why is it so hard? And why do people fight so hard to keep them here?
Yeah, and I think that this is a degree of, it's an extension of Trump derangement syndrome. I think there's now an ICE hysteria going on, and that people are willing to put politics ahead of public safety. We've talked time and time again about these sanctuary cities simply honoring ICE detainers, and what that means is that if they have an illegal alien in their custody, simply before they're released, notify ICE so that they're turned over and not released back onto the streets to re-perpetuate these crimes. That is very common sense. I would think that was maybe a 90-10 issue, but we see time and time again that these sanctuary city politicians, in the name of politics, in the name of serving their base, they refuse to put public safety up front.
So we've had 4 radical Islamic terrorist
Yep.
attacks in the last few weeks, 2 yesterday. The Department of Homeland Security, by the way, is still shut down. The media is not talking about that much. But Democrats yesterday, again, voted to keep it shut down. You've been on the inside. How dangerous of a situation are we in with DHS shut down and these terrorists obviously wishing harm in America?
Well, it's incredibly dangerous. So this is 28 days. We've had 300 TSA agents resign. But that's not to mention DHS HQ at large. Those individuals are not being paid. The U.S. Coast Guard, Secret Service, when, of course, we've seen attempts at the president's life multiple times now. TSA, that's a huge problem. It is spring break season, too. You're going to have an influx in volume of passengers and people trying to get through screening, and that's while the U.S. faces a heightened alert of terrorism. I think that the American people should be extremely concerned. I was glad to see Alyssa Slotkin. Unfortunately, it took a terrorist attack in her home state for her to say she would fund DHS. It should not take that. It should not take the loss of life or violence.
Yeah, Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat senator from Michigan, now saying she wants to fund it, although yesterday she had a chance to do that and voted with the rest of the Democrats. Tricia, we're really glad you came by today and glad that you were here in Ohio while we were here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Ohio politics, but I tell you what, I'm going to save that for a conversation in the coming days if you'll come back and talk to us about it, because you do have some experience on that here.
I'd love to. Thank you,
All
Scott.
right. Tricia McLaughlin, the former Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, has been our great guest. We're going to take a break and more after this on the Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. You know, I got to tell you, I think nutrition has gotten way too complicated. Every week there's a new powder, a new lab-created formula, some new breakthrough. But here is the truth. We've been told since we were kids to eat our fruits and vegetables. Nobody really had to explain why. We just did it. Because when you eat whole foods, you're getting phytonutrients, those natural compounds that your body uses to adjust, repair, and respond every single day. That's not hype. That's how human beings were designed. That's why I take Balance of Nature. They use a tailored vacuum cold process that stabilizes the phytonutrition in fruits and veggies, so you're getting real whole food nutrition, not synthetic substitutes. Their whole health system includes fruits and veggies plus fiber and spice, 47 ingredients in one simple routine. I take it myself. If you want to fight the good fight, go to balanceofnature.com to subscribe and save today. Join hundreds of thousands of customers in one simple routine that is changing the world.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
It's Friday, March 13th, broadcasting from Columbus, Ohio today. Do want to drop in a note about the Gulf of America cruise that is happening in November of this year. I'll be there. Mike Gallagher will be there, our friend and mentor here from Salem, the legend Mike Gallagher. We're going to be on this luxury cruise ship. We want you to join us. That's the purpose of it. This is not Gallagher and Jennings just taking a week off. Our purpose is to invite you and have as many listeners as we can come on this unforgettable journey, turquoise waters, white sand beaches, incredible food, and a lot of conversation about the future of our country. The cruise is right after the November election, so we'll have a lot to discuss. Here is how you book your cabin. You text the word cruise to 94878, or you visit scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. Text the word cruise to 94878. And an important note, you got to book it through us the way I just said it. That's how you have to do it. Because if you try to do it through the company itself or the cruise ship, you're not going to have access to all the great insider stuff with Gallagher and Jennings. So just text the word cruise to 94878. We'll celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation on the Gulf of America cruise in November. Okay, let's do a little bit more breaking news. The president has made some comments on the terrorist attacks that happened yesterday. We reported on those earlier in the hour. Let's hear from the president in cut number 9.
Disgrace. They're sick. They're really demented people. And has been going on for a long time. They come into the country. They sneak in. You know, we have a solid border now. We have a border that's 100%. 9 months, nobody coming in. But they came in, and they came in a lot through Biden, and they came in through other presidents, frankly. And It's a disgrace. But what we took in over the last 4 years preceding my take in, because we had that border pretty well wrapped up within 3 months, but and he could have done the same thing. We took in 25 million people, and many of those people came from bad places. So it's a shame when you hear about these things. It's a shame, very sad.
President doing a radio interview there this morning. He also made some comments on the war effort, and he credited the Gulf states who are doing a good job at protecting themselves. Let's hear more from the president in cut number 11.
Well, the Gulf states are doing a very good job in protecting themselves. They have great Patriot missiles, which are the defensive missiles that have knocked down virtually 100% of the time they use. They knock down whatever they're aimed at. They've been unbelievable. It's been unbelievable technology. Look, nobody has the technology or the weapons that we have, and the Patriots are an example of it. We have the Tomahawks. We have the Patriots. We have stuff that nobody's ever been able to produce, and they can't produce it like us. So we'll see how it all goes, Brian. I mean, it's going very well. We're way ahead of schedule, way ahead. We had no idea we'd be this far ahead. We've knocked out close to 90% of their missiles.
President projecting optimism about the war effort, and Secretary Hegseth and General Kane briefed the media this morning and said this will be one of the heaviest bombardment days of the 2-week effort. Tricia McLaughlin, our guest in the last segment, referenced this. I also have a clip here. This is Michigan Democrat Senator Elissa Slotkin. Now, she's been voting repeatedly to keep the Department of Homeland Security closed, even though we have terror attacks, even though we have TSA issues at numerous airports now. And one of the terror attacks took place in her home state of Michigan. It took a terrorist attack at a synagogue in Michigan for Michigan Senator Elissa Slotkin to say, oh, well, gee whiz, maybe it's not a great idea to shut down the Department of Homeland Security. Here's Slotkin in cut 12.
The Department of Homeland Security is not fully funded right now. Do you fear that leaves us less prepared for incidents like these than we should be?
Yeah, I would just say the department, because they are essential workers, they have been, at work. Certainly in Michigan, we have a ton of DHS folks, CBP, and so they are on the call and they are doing their jobs. Certainly, we need to fund the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay, she says we need to fund the Department of Homeland Security. That's a good phrase. But right now, most Democrats in the Senate don't want to do it. And it's extremely dangerous. Terrorism, radical Islamic terrorism. The TSA lines are not insignificant. Numerous airports are reporting staffing shortages and longer lines. I stood myself in a fairly long line at LaGuardia coming out of New York City this morning. We have a lot going on in a big agency with its hand in a lot of it. The Democrats have had it closed down here for several weeks, and now we have terror attacks going on in our country. Pretty irresponsible. We're going to take a break and have more after this. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Back for hour number 2 of Common Sense for the American People. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. And by the way, broadcasting from Columbus, Ohio today. And we thank our friends here at 98.9 The Answer, our Salem affiliate in Columbus. We appreciate their hospitality and setting us up here in this great studio. Quick check of the headlines. Tonight, 8 o'clock, the United States takes on Canada in the World Baseball Classic quarterfinals. The winner faces South Korea or the Dominican Republic in the semifinals on Sunday. The U.S. military says all 6 service members aboard an American refueling aircraft were killed when it crashed in Iraq on Thursday. The U.S. says the incident was not due to hostile fire or friendly fire, but an Iranian proxy group is trying to claim responsibility. The United States says that is not true. The Transportation Security Administration, TSA, rolled out a new video at airports across the country on Friday, warning travelers of longer than usual wait times because of staffing shortages. And it blames Democrats for the partial government shutdown. And yesterday in the Senate, Democrats did once again vote against funding the Department of Homeland Security. There are airports across the country reporting long lines today. I myself stood in a long line at LaGuardia Airport in New York early this morning. So if you're going to the airport, my advice, get there early. Tyler Robinson, the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk, is expected to appear in court Friday as the debate continues over public access to aspects of his trial. This has been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and a lot of us are wondering when we're going to get justice for Charlie. And we continue our coverage this hour on 2 terrorist attacks that happened in the United States yesterday, one in Michigan and one in Virginia. A lot of folks are saying the radicals are at the door, and they might even be at the dinner table. And the rapid ascendance of Mayor Mamdani in New York City was a sign of changing times for the Democratic Party and how they deal with these things. Joining us now to talk about his latest piece in the National Review called Radicals Are at the Door is Tall Fortgang. Tall is a legal policy fellow at the Manhattan Institute. His interests there include law, political theory, religion, ideology, and culture. Tall, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Scott.
So in your piece, I think it would be helpful for you to explain to our listeners how you define the difference between your average Democrat and the Democratic Socialists of America. Because a lot of people, I think, hear that, Tall, and they think, oh, well, they just want to be like Norway or whatever. That's not really the case. Tell us about these Democratic Socialists like Mamdani and others and what their actual viewpoints are when it comes to America's foundation and Western civilization.
There's a common misconception about the Democratic Socialists of America, and it's a misconception sometimes held by its defenders and sometimes held by its detractors for different reasons, obviously. And that is that the Democratic Socialists of America are merely the left flank of the Democratic Party. They're maybe slightly more progressive than your average Democratic politician. But fundamentally, this misconception holds that the DSA is an organically growing segment within the traditional Democratic Party bloc. That's wrong. The DSA pre-existed before it became politically mainstream. It existed as part of an organized constellation of radical activist groups outside of politics. Activist groups that you may recognize as the Party for Socialism and Liberation, a group that openly celebrates political violence, especially against supporters of Israel. Groups like the Palestinian Youth Movement, which is under investigation for trying to interrupt the United States military supply chain. Radical groups that routinely break laws for strategic purposes. The DSA comes from that world. It is that activist universe's attempt to implant itself within the mainstream of politics, and they're quite open about trying to use the Democratic Party as their vehicle to enter the political mainstream and basically elbow any regular center-left individuals from the Democrats.
Well, Tall, I assume you agree with me. Not only are they trying to do that, they're having a fair amount of success. It seems to me that in addition to the DSA adherents like Mamdani, who've won elective office, what they're really having success doing is cowing, old school Democrats or Democrats who've been around for a long time and sort of forcing them to begin to take positions that they might not have ordinarily took or that are in radical, hypocritical opposition to positions they took just years ago. I think about people like Chuck Schumer, who now says things that are in total opposition to what he used to say on a number of issues. Is it your view that it is the DSA, these Democratic Socialists, who are having a fair amount of success at reorienting Democratic messaging, even for people who may have used to seem somewhat reasonable?
There are a few threads that we can trace that are pulling the Democratic Party to the left. And you see this increasing by the week, even by the day, as you have people like Gavin Newsom agreeing to go on these fringe leftist lunatic streamers shows and start talking about geopolitical affairs in ways that they never would. Whether that is the DSA institutionally succeeding or its message getting out through that activist network that we talked about, through the construction of a false consensus about things like immigration enforcement or our relationship towards Israel. They get out in the streets and they make people's lives miserable by blocking traffic and engaging in other law-breaking activity, and they create this appearance that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people who hold these fringe views, and through these actions and through the activist takeover of the academy, they've convinced a great many young people who might have otherwise been inclined to a kind of form of recognized left liberalism, but nothing this crazy. They convince them that this is where the future is, and then the politicians follow, because that is where they sense the votes are coming from. Just one thing before I let this go. You prompted me before to talk about some of the substantive views that these groups hold. I go into this in the piece in National Review, but just to give you a taste of how shocking some of this stuff is. I mean, the DSA has an international committee that is concerned with international affairs. It is an open propaganda shop for the world's worst dictators. I mean, we're used to hearing them talk about communist countries like Cuba and Venezuela with measures of sympathy for the Castros and Maduros of the world. But we're talking about open defense and celebration of Iran and the mullahs. We're talking about holding conferences to support North Korea. These are insane views that are only unified by a hatred of the United States of America.
Yeah, it's a hatred of the United States, and it's a desire to see the downfall of Western civilization. I mean, that is the bottom line here. They don't like the way we do things, and they have decided to infiltrate our political system in order to bring about their radical desires. The article is called "Radicals Are at the Door." The author is the voice you've been hearing, Tall Fortgang. He's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, and I encourage everybody to check it out. Tall, thanks for coming on the Scott Jennings Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, let's talk about Relief Factor, because they've done something that you need to know about. They have improved the formula, which may come as a surprise to you if you're a customer. You would say, well, Scott, it's already working great. It's going to work better now because Relief Factor has added a premium black pepper extract, which helps your body absorb the high-quality key ingredients more efficiently. So if you think it's good today, when you get the new Relief Factor formula, it's going to be even better. If you have aches and pains and you haven't decided to do something about it, let me just make a recommendation. Relief Factor has a 3-week quick start plan. It's $19.95. You should do this. You have nothing to lose. ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. You have nothing to lose, but you have a lot to gain, like getting your life back, taking your life and your schedule back from these aches and pains. It's Relief Factor, ReliefFactor.com or 1-800-4RELIEF. In fact, when we come back, we have our regular Friday feature, the Relief Factor Pain of the Week. What will it be? Stay with us to find out.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, Friday, March 13th, and Friday at 21 minutes past the hour. You know what that means. It is a Friday afternoon tradition here. It is time for the Relief Factor Pain of the Week.
And now, the Relief Factor Pain of the Week.
Oh. I got to be honest with you guys. I'm in a little bit of pain myself. I am not feeling great. And I don't know what it is. And I'm fighting through this show here, and I'm really grateful for all of you. But the pain of the week could have been my own discomfort. But you know, there was something this week that was even worse than what I am doing right now. Lobstergate, the great lobster hoax of 2026. I honestly cannot believe what the Democrats, the late night hosts, the pundits, the congressmen, every single person with a megaphone or a voice or a social media account in the Democratic Party decided to try to convince the American people that Pete Hegseth had bought himself millions of dollars worth of lobsters out of the Defense Department budget. This hit me smack dab in the face on Wednesday night when I have to say, my friend and my colleague, Paul Begala at CNN, we are friends. I like Paul Begala. Obviously, he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican. But I was flabbergasted when we had this exchange. Let's listen to Cut 13.
He has spent $15 million in 1 month for ribeye steak, $6.9 million for lobster tail, $225 million for furniture. He spent more in the month of September than most countries on earth spend in their defense. Paul,
do you believe
himself? Lobster tails?
Do you believe
while our troops are eating MREs?
No.
Do
you believe the Secretary of Defense is personally eating all the lobster?
Wait, he can't eat 16?
Troops.
Oh, really? The troops are getting lobster?
Frequently in theater.
Oh, my God.
Troops who are going to war.
Oh, my God.
Great meal. You know that.
They're getting lobster. You are so full of it.
You're going to get killed over this. Internet, do something.
I asked the Internet to do something. And within 45 minutes, the Internet had, in fact, done its thing. Receipts were pulled. Videos were floated from soldiers who are deployed right now, eating steak and lobster, just like I had said. But this lobster hoax of 2026 did not end with Paul Begala. You had Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, all of them, of course, parroting the same lie. You had dozens upon dozens members of Congress, even members of Congress, by the way, who had been in the military, who know full well we send steak and lobster and crab legs. They were parroting the lie. You had media reporting it. What is the truth? The truth is, at the end of the budgeting year, the Defense Department does buy large quantities of lots of things. Absolutely true. And the truth is, they do send lobster and steak and crab legs and ice cream and other things to our troops who are putting their lives on the line. It is well-known military tradition. And the idea that these Democrats would not know that, I don't believe it. They do know it. The problem is they just think you're too stupid. They think their constituents, their supporters, their people are too stupid. And they know that their political base will literally believe anything. And that is the sad truth about the left and the Democratic Party. They will believe anything. A majority of Democrats, according to polling, still believes that Russia hacked and stole the 2016 election. And when I say hacked and stole, I mean they actually believe that Russia got into the voting machines and changed the vote tally numbers so that Trump could be declared the winner. Majority of Democrats believe this. And now a majority of Democrats will believe the great lobster hoax of 2026, 5, 10, 15 years from now, at your grocery store, you run into your local Democratic friend staring at the seafood aisle, lobsters in the tank. They will look at you and say, oh boy, can't believe there's any lobsters left. Didn't Pete Hegseth eat them all? That's how dumb they are. They believe anything. They're willing to be programmed by anything. And it is just painful and painfully stupid when it happens. And that is why the Great Lobster Hoax of 2026 is my relief factor pain of the week. If you are dealing with pain, if a lobster has bitten you, perhaps, try Relief Factor's 3-week quick start. See how it works. 1-800-4-RELIEF or visit relieffactor.com. Friday Punditry is next. It's Scott on Salem. Stay with us.
That's the Relief Factor pain of the week.
And it's common sense for the American people. Scott Scott Jennings here, Friday, January 16th. Speaking of pundits, my next guest is host of the Numbers Game podcast. His name is Ryan Girdusky. He's one of the best advocates for parental rights in the conservative movement. You've probably seen him on cable TV, you see him on social media, but for Friday Punditry, we welcome into the show Ryan Girdusky. Ryan, thanks for joining us here on the Scott Jennings Show.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, I think, I don't know, you're sounding a little choppy there. Tell you what, why don't you guys work on that for a second while we set up Friday Punditry. So we're going to get Ryan back on the line here. On Friday Punditry, what we like to do is kind of go over some of the bigger issues of the week, maybe things that got a little overlooked or things we want to revisit. So while we get Ryan back on the line, one of the things that happened this week in Washington that I think, it got a little attention when it happened, especially on the right, but boy, this issue that happened in front of the Supreme Court this week, where you had lawyers from the ACLU arguing against state-level bans on boys playing in girls' sports. This is the transgender sports case. It emanated out of West Virginia, in fact, and some other states. But basically, the ACLU intervenes here and says, we want to sue over this. It makes it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I want to play Cut 22 here. This is an ACLU lawyer going back and forth with the court. And to me, one of the most defining moments of the week. Cut 22.
If it does that, then is it not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition? For equal protection purposes, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court.
A definition for the court. You know, it's kind of hard to argue against things or for things if you can't even say out loud what the definition of things are. Do we have Mr. Girdusky back? I'm hearing heavy sighs from the booth. The technical gremlins have invaded the Scott Jennings Show today. Well, we'll keep working on Ryan.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Hey, Ryan.
Oh, there you are. Hi, how are you, Scott? How's it going?
Hey, man.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. And you sound way better now. I just played the clip of the ACLU lawyer this week in front of the court who was unable to define what is gender, for the court. I'm sure you saw this clip. What'd you make of that? I thought it was one of the most defining moments of the week.
It has to be because, if you're going to make sex about one of the conditions for everything along with race and gender identity, you should know what at least one of those genders are. You should be able to define them. And they're handcuffing themselves over this very small fragment of the population because they can't possibly go against their value system right there, that a transgender person, a person born biologically male, is never going to be female, and they're very torn by something that people have known for the last 5,000 years.
Yeah, that moment in front of the Supreme Court this week, and then almost at the same time, you had that doctor up on Capitol Hill testifying in front of the Senate Help Committee who refused to answer a question from Senator Josh Hawley, can a man get pregnant? And you had this doctor talking in circles. Those two things happening right back to back, I got to tell you, it just felt to me like the entire wind came out of the sails of the whole transgender cult movement this week. Do you feel that way, or what's your read on it?
I don't. They came in this, I think, into this court case with the winds in their face. They were facing very long odds at winning this because it's politically unpopular. What they're advocating for is politically unpopular. So it's much easier for conservatives. It's not like, I guess, back in the day when, Justice Kennedy would have to sit there and kind of put his finger into the wind and say, how is it going to affect me at parties, in near Capitol Hill? That's not the issue. It's super unpopular with almost everybody. So they had that working against them. They've had political losses working against them. Obviously, Trump's ad in 2024 saying "I'm for you," and Kamala's for they them was devastating on a number of fronts, but that was one of them. And I don't see how, I don't see how they come out of this winning. I think this is going to be a pretty decisive loss for them. I mean, maybe you'll have one or two justices going against them, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a 7-2 decision.
Yeah, well, certainly they're going to have one, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has proven time and again that she's the most incompetent and unprepared person to ever sit on the Supreme Court. If you listen to what she had to say this week, it's pretty obvious which way she's headed. Let's switch gears. I want to get your thoughts, Ryan, on this case. Didn't get a ton of attention, although this guy got a lot of attention over the last few months. Mahmoud Khalil. There was a federal appeals court that overturned a lower court decision regarding Khalil being deported, I guess, by the federal government. You know, we last saw a video of him, I think, at the swearing in of Mamdani for mayor here in New York City. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what is the status of Khalil right now? I mean, this is the guy who was at Columbia. He's the guy taking part in all the anti-Semitic protests. He's out here, promoting the cause of October the 7th, if you can believe it. He's not an American. He's in the country, I guess, on a visa. He is married to a U.S. citizen. Yeah, where are we sitting with Khalil right now after this week's court action?
Well, I mean, I think the ruling against him. First of all, I want to sit there and put something out there. The amount of money that has been spent on this one man over the context of the hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens who have been deported in the meantime should, I mean, give Republicans a little bit of breath of how fixated Democrats have been at not stopping Trump, but stopping one singular case, and it hasn't really worked in their favor. I think given the fact that the court ruling gives pretty good green light for Trump to sit there and start moving for deportation again, and I just kind of don't see this as a case where the Supreme Court's even going to weigh in if the appellate court rules ultimately in Trump's favor. I don't think they're going to give standing to it, because I mean, it would be pretty wild over a singular case. I mean, maybe they could. Who knows what the court does? The court always kind of acts the way they want to. But it's looking like a greater and greater option that he will, in fact, not be in the United States in the very near future.
You know what kind of agitates me about this case? It's obvious that the administration believes his presence here is a national security threat. And then when you attach it to Kilmer Abrego Garcia, the illegal alien that the administration is trying to deport, he's still here in the United States, as far as I know. You have these cases, Ryan, that pop up, and you've got a clear preference from the executive branch to remove someone from the country. The amount of energy and bureaucracy that goes into keeping people here over the clear wishes of the commander-in-chief and over the Secretary of State, it's really something. I mean, it's something, and it makes you wonder, if you can't even get people like this out of the country, how in the world are you ever going to deport 20 million people that Biden led in over his 4 years in office?
Well, and that's why, I mean, that's the case that Vice President Vance made, that the need to sit there and move for mass deportations at a fast speed and not give them 30 different court appeals is essential. You have to do it, because otherwise you're never going to get any kind of close to deportation numbers that the administration wants. And some of these people have multiple deportations, that to begin with, I think over 1.5 million people already have deportation orders to leave the country and just haven't on top of it. So those people, I mean, they have to go first. There should be no court case. It's really the legal apparatus around the ACLU and open borders organizations that are keeping these people here, people who have very dangerous beliefs that are incompatible with the American identity, something that, they reject ultimately.
All right, Ryan Gradusky's here for Friday Punditry, host of the Numbers Game podcast. Ryan, I want to talk about a couple of Senate races. Let's start in Texas. We heard this week that President Trump is unlikely to make a choice or an endorsement in the Republican primary for Senate in Texas. It's a three-way race. John Cornyn is the incumbent. You also have Congressman Wesley Hunt in there and Ken Paxton as well. We saw some polling out of that this week, and honestly, it's pretty close. All really, really tight down there in Texas. They have a March primary. What are you picking up in the vibrations out there about the Texas Senate primary? Is it too close to call right now, or do you think you have a beat on which way it's headed?
I think it's headed to a runoff no matter what happens, right? I mean, I don't see either Cornyn or Paxton coming out with over 50% of the vote. And I've done races in Texas. You know, I was Brandon Gill's GC, so I've been there. And the feeling that I've always met from Texans, activist Texans around Paxton is, look, he's definitely got a shady past, but he's our guy with a shady past, right? There is a love for Ken Paxton because he was the man who fought Biden for years, and I think he actually fought Obama too, if I'm not mistaken, towards the end of his term. But they do love Ken Paxton on there. John Cornyn is an old establishment figure who has done nothing to win over love from grassroots people. He's never even tried that much, right? It's kind of boggles the mind as you see old figures, you know, losing primaries or having very tough elections, and he never made the overtures to kind of sit there and avoid, you know, to do Lindsey Graham. He never tried, as much as Lindsey Graham is something that conservatives don't love. Lindsey Graham has done overtures to try and win over love from Trump voters. Cornyn never did that, which is bizarre to me. Ultimately, I don't think Wesley Hunt has the juice to sit there and knock Paxton into second place or Cornyn. So ultimately it becomes a race of Paxton and Cornyn for a runoff. And where do Wesley Hunt voters go? Do they hate Cornyn more, or do they sit there and think that Paxton is too nefarious of a character?
And let's do 30 seconds on Maine, the Democratic primary. The insurgents in the Democratic Party want this guy, Graham Plattner. You might remember him. He had the Nazi tattoo on his chest. And he's taking on the governor of Maine, Janet Mills. And there was some polling this week showing Plattner way ahead of Mills. That's been pretty consistent. Any bead on the Democrats up there in Maine?
Maine's a hard state to poll, so I'm not exactly sit there and guarantee it. But Mills is old. She's close to 80 years old to be a freshman senator. I think people kind of really have a lot of energy towards the guy who's kind of pretending to be a working class hero. And ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a successor. It will drain Maine Democrats' finances going against Susan Collins. So they're going to have to start brand new from the get-go after a very bitter primary that they're headed towards.
All right, it's Friday Punditry. That voice you're hearing, Ryan Gradusky, host of the Numbers Game podcast. Ryan, hang on, because when we come back, I'm going to ask you the most important question. Who won the week? We'll get your thoughts on that when we come back. First, a quick message from our friends at Patriot Mobile. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to switch your cell phone service to Patriot Mobile. Why? Because if you do, you are helping grow a movement that fuels the Christian conservative cause. It is as simple as that. Signing up with Patriot Mobile is signing up for a company that shares your values. Every time you pay your cell phone bill will advance the values of faith, family, and freedom. Switching over is easier than ever. You can keep your number, you can keep your phone, or you can upgrade your phone, and you can take a stand today. You get a new cell phone company and you take a stand for what we care about. PatriotMobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Scott and they'll give you a free month. You switch to Patriot Mobile, PatriotMobile.com/Scott, and you use promo code Scott, you get a free month of service. PatriotMobile.com/Scott. Call 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today to a company that shares your values. They are on the front lines at Patriot Mobile of defending. It's Friday Punditry here on January the 16th. Ryan Gradusky, host of the Numbers Game podcast, is our special guest pundit of the week. Ryan, let's take a listen to our friend Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, defrocking one of the so-called reporters sitting in the press briefing room yesterday. Here's Caroline, cut 12.
Why was Renee Good unfortunately and tragically killed?
Are you asking me my opinion? Because an ICE agent acted recklessly and killed her unjustifiably.
Oh, okay. So you're a biased reporter with a left-wing opinion.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, because you're a left-wing hack. You're not a reporter. You're posing in this room as a journalist, and it's so clear by the premise of your question. And you and the people in the media who have such biases but fake like you're a journalist, you shouldn't even be sitting in that seat. but you're pretending like you're a journalist, but you're a left-wing activist. And the question that you just raised and your answer proves your bias. You should be reporting on the facts. You should be reporting on the cases. Do you have the numbers of how many American citizens were killed at the hands of illegal aliens who ICE is trying to remove from this country? I bet you don't. I bet you didn't even read up on those stories. I bet you never even read about Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungray or all of the innocent Americans who were killed at the hands of illegal aliens in this country. And the brave men and women of ICE are doing everything in their power to remove those heinous individuals and make our communities safer. And shame on people like you in the media who have a crooked view and have a biased view and pretend like you're a real honest journalist.
Ryan, reaction to Caroline Leavitt going off from the podium. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's why she's Trump's press secretary. She did a great job. That was fire. And that is what, it's very funny for the amount of people. There's one illegal alien who was found strangled to death at an ICE facility. And he was wanted for child rape. And and no one is caring about the actual case of why he was arrested. It's about the conditions of illegal aliens. But that is always the case for the left, is that it is never about American citizens. Our immigration policy is always how to reward foreigners. It's never to sit there and look. And I'm telling you this, you're in panels all the time with left-wingers who have this opinion. It's always why are we not doing enough for the rest of the world? Not should these immigrants be doing more for the United States.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of panels this week, and especially since Wednesday, when you had the ICE agent that was beaten with a shovel by 3 Venezuelan nationals. I tried to bring this up on CNN yesterday, and they pivot to other things. It's when something that's inconvenient to the narrative comes out, like, hey, we got 3 Venezuelan illegal aliens running around with shovels trying to beat ICE agents to death in Minneapolis. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about something else. It happens all. That ain't too convenient to the narrative, Ryan. All right, we got a couple of minutes to go here. Ryan, you are the second person to get this question on the Scott Jennings Show. So, who is Ryan Grodowski's winner of the week? Who won the week in politics?
I was thinking long and hard about this, and I'm going to give you a surprise answer. Kamala Harris. She was somebody they considered dead in the water. She had a good week politically. She's made it basically known she wants to run for president again. Polls came out that black voters in the Deep South, who are the base of the Democratic Party, you need their voters. They favor her over Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom and her had a decades-long political rivalry. She had a great week to make an eventual comeback. And Gavin Newsom, who's been spending political capital nonstop to build a political career for himself and become a presidential nominee, she's did a very, very good job. I don't know if she will make a run. I don't know if she's going to end up doing this. But if she wants to, she made a great step this week. And she's my political winner of the week, which I didn't expect.
She's your political winner of the week. And I think I read that she bought like an $8 million house somewhere. Yeah. So not only is she your political winner of the week, she's going to be in very nice digs very soon. All right, I usually pick the loser of the week, and I played the clip up at front when you came on. I think the ACLU was the loser of the week. They went in front of the Supreme Court. They couldn't offer basic answers. They couldn't make definitions about gender when asked very direct questions by the court. I think the ACLU, pretty much their performance in front of the Supreme Court spelled the end of the transgender cult movement in the United States. And so for me, loser of the week, ACLU, and quite specifically the lawyer who went in front of the Supreme Court and completely and totally embarrassed herself. Ryan, thanks for being with us today. Where can folks find you on social media, and where do we find your podcast?
On Twitter at Ryan Grodowski, and you can find a Numbers Game podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or on YouTube. So I really appreciate coming here, Scott.
Ryan, we'll have you back. Ryan Grodowski, host of the Numbers Game podcast and a sharp pundit, and one of our friends here at the Scott Jennings Show. That's it for the week. We're going to get out of here, go to the weekend. We'll be back with you Monday. You can grab this on my social media feeds at Scott Jennings KY. Get it where Apple and Spotify are distributing podcasts, and we're on live every day, 1 to 3 on Salem. It's common sense. We appreciate you. See you Monday.